Underneath the buoys, there is kind of a fence-type device that goes all the way to the bottom of the river. Altogether, it either completely prevents everyone from crossing at the area of the buoys, or it dramatically slows them down before they arrive at the concertina razor wire that the National Guard of Texas have deployed.
The one person that is sowing chaos is Governor Abbott. That's what he continues to do, political stunts, in an inhumane way.
Texas is defending its sovereignty and its constitutional right.
Hey, how's it going, my friends? Welcome back in very hot, scorching San Diego today. I couldn't even wear the jacket and tie. It was just too hot. I was even going to take this off and just wear my tank top, but everyone got scared. So okay, I'll keep my shirt on. Thank you very much. Today's going to be a great episode. We're going to go over this very big dispute between the state of Texas and the United States federal government over immigration. And it's not necessarily a podcast about immigration, believe it or not. It's actually about the power struggle between the state of Texas and the United States federal government. And this is a very big constitutional battle. And you're going to learn about the constitutional battle, how it works, jurisdictional issues, how it relates to immigration issues. And then I have a dad joke of the day. I'll do it at the end. I'm going to try to do that. I have so many. I love the dad jokes. They're my favorite jokes. My kids sometimes like it too. So the dispute here goes like this. So Governor Abbott in Texas has been complaining that, the immigration has taken a toll in the state of Texas, right? And because Texas shares the border with Mexico, and there's so many migrants coming in, and that it's kind of like overloading the system. And according to Governor Abbott, there's more crime. There's, a lot of unrest there. It's causing like all sorts of problems. And it's kind of something that he's saying the federal government isn't stopping. And so because the federal government's not stopping it, Governor Abbott of Texas is saying, well, I got to stop it. And he's been trying to stop it by, and we did an episode on it where he's been busing thousands of migrants across the country. And that was one thing that he tried doing. And when we did a podcast, I said in that podcast that I don't think he was violating any law by doing that. I didn't find a constitutional violation of him having migrants going on buses. I could be wrong down the line. He's been doing it since then, so I don't know. All right. Now, this one is going to be much different. He is having the state of Texas and Governor Abbott, they're putting these barriers along the Rio Grande. Mateo is a Texan. Do they pronounce it Rio Grande or Rio Grande?
My grandpa said Grandy.
So should we all be saying Grandy?
Well, my brother kind of changed it to Grande because Grandy was kind of like the I guess Americanized version of it, All
right. So the way the Texans say the Rio Grande. What's the E then at the end, huh? What do they say about that E at the end? Huh? Not grande, not grande. Okay, so what he did is he put these, they're called floating buyas or floating barriers along the river. And the reason to do this, and he did it near the city of Eagle Pass, because that is a place where there's a lot of crossing. And there's a lot of crossing there because right across from Eagle Pass, trivia, what's the city in Mexico right across? It's, Piedras Negras, like these black stones in Spanish. Okay, so there's a popular city right next to it, and there's, it's shallow there, the Rio Grande, all right, and it's narrow. So it's an easy place to cross, until Governor Abbott comes in and places these barriers. It's almost... and it's pretty dangerous. The barriers will make it harder to cross so people can drown, because they can't cross when they're trying to cross. And there's like razor wire between the floating barriers. And they're floating, but they're like in the ground. So they're not floating away, right? And, there's razor wire between them. It's all the way to the ground. There's, and it's just impossible to cross. It's like, imagine a wall in the middle of the river. Right. So when you have people trying to cross with their, with their kids, or if they're old or they're young or even men, whatever, anyone. And there's, already been signs of kind of injured people and that. So it is new. The federal government told the state of Texas that you cannot put those barriers in there. And here's a couple pictures of it. All right. So as you could see, these barriers are, it's going all across that river. And it's now making it tougher to cross, which is what the state of Texas wants to do. And the federal government is obviously fighting them. And now we have here a fight, okay, kind of a struggle over power in terms of if the state of Texas can do this or not. And this is gonna, it's gonna be a big battle. And now we have to kind of figure out how to do this. And Governor Abbott, he sent a letter to President Biden. And in that letter, he said, "Dear President Biden." By the way, I always, after you write, let's say, "Dear President Biden," do you put a full colon or a comma? Are you a comma? You're a comma? Yeah. See, he's a full colon like me. I remember vividly in grammar school. I'm a lot older, but I remember Mrs. Truesdale. She would yell at us. She goes, "No, you have to have a full colon in a formal letter." I think, but times have changed since the 80s, and now I think a comma is okay. But this guy did it old school like I do it. Okay. In a late night letter sent to me last Thursday, I don't know why he had to put late night letter, because it was sent several days before. It's like, what are they going to be like? The letter was sent at 1 a.m. It doesn't matter, Okay. It's not like somebody knocked on his door and gave him the letter. Anyway, your lawyers at the Department of Justice threatened to sue the state of Texas over the floating marine barriers we have deployed in the Rio Grande River in Eagle Pass. And here it is, Abbott. "Texas will see you in court, Mr. President." Now, by the way, I hate that term, "see you in court." You know why? Because lawyers never say, "I'll see you in court." In fact, in my I started in the legal field 26 years ago now. I don't think another lawyer has ever said, "I'll see you in court." You know who says, "I'll see you in court"? Assholes. So I don't know why. I don't know. I'm not calling Governor Abbott an asshole. I'm just saying that's what most people say. That, like weird plaintiffs or what we call pro per, like people that defend themselves. "I'll see you in court." Anyway, okay. All right. So he says to President Biden, "I'll see you in court." And that's what happened. Then we have a federal lawsuit. All right. Now, what we have here, and then in another part of his letter, this is something funny. He says he's kind of bickering about the president's interpretation of the law, the federal government's interpretation of the law. With all that in mind, your lawyers claim that Texas's floating marine barriers violate Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act, and your argument misses the mark. Okay, I like that, misses the mark. Because he says that your argument about this federal Rivers and Harbors Act, it misses the mark. I think he should have said something better. He should have said, "Your argument doesn't hold water." Right? I mean, if you're gonna be a smart ass, you gotta do it legit. Okay? So, all right. Now, here we go. So let me explain kind of the way the law works here. We have first in these other letters that Abbott is writing, he is making it clear to President Biden. Like he says things like in a previous letter, and these are what's called open letters. Like he publishes that to everyone. "Dear President Biden, full colon, thank you very much. Your visit to our southern border with Mexico today is $20 billion too little and 2 years too late." And then he goes on to basically say, "Listen, President Biden, you effed up this immigration situation by making it so easy for these migrants to cross the border. If you were a real man like Trump, okay, you'd close the border and then we wouldn't have all these people trying to cross." And then he's saying that by making it easier to cross the border, you're the one, President Biden, who is causing all of these death of migrants, because you're making it easier to cross the border so that, there's an incentive to try to cross the border. And if there's like a 2% chance of dying, people will cross the border. Now, 2% is a lot. When you have like 3 million people, that's 60,000 deaths. Do you see what I'm saying? So what the Governor Abbott is saying is, by making it so simple to cross the border, a lot of people are going to try to cross and a lot of people will die. The way to make the border safer and less deaths, okay, is to make the border more dangerous. Okay, this is his position. And okay, listen, here's how it goes. He says, by putting the barriers, by putting razor wire, by putting a wall, if we put mines, that's like the next step, right? Snipers nearby, right? If we make it so dangerous that it's it's a 0% chance you're going to cross safely, then nobody will cross the border. That's the theory, right? Or a lot less people will cross the border and a lot less people will die. All right. So that is what we call in law like a policy debate. Should we make it so dangerous that nobody tries to even do it? Or should we make it safe because people are going to do it anyway? So make it safe so that these kids and moms and dad don't die doing it, right? That is a policy dispute up to voters and up to the legislature and things like that. Joe Samo, I always say this, I'm only an expert in one thing in this world, and that's the law. So my goal today is to kind of explain, well, how does that break down in terms of who decides that, which governmental entity and how they decide it. And if there's a dispute between governmental entities, which we have here, a dispute between the federal government and the state of Texas, how does that dispute get resolved? All right. That's kind of what my goal here. So, so Abbott wrote those letters to President Biden. Now, this is going to be a very important thing to understand. And this is kind of what's going to go into how the courts are going to decide this matter. Briefly, this Rio Grande River, it is owned by the United States and Mexico, all right? Both countries own the river together. And it's kind of strange because the boundary is that river, and they kind of say like, okay, wherever the middle is. All right. But it's weird because the middle changes a lot because the river could get more water or less water depending on the year and everything. But the two countries own it together. Who does not own it? The state of Texas. Right. And this goes back in terms of and why this is important is because there have been wars fought over how we're going to regulate the southern border of Texas, that Rio Grande River. And this goes in the 1600s, okay? Spain took over this area and it was a Spanish colony for centuries. And it wasn't until the 1820s that Mexico won independence and got all this land. So Mexico then had the land that's all modern day Texas. That was all Mexican land. And then ultimately, a twist of irony here, there was a lot of Mexicans living there. And then there were these illegal aliens from the United States going to Texas, right? They're like, we want to live here. And eventually there was a revolution in Texas. Okay. Remember the Alamo? Remember the Alamo, right? There was a revolution, and the revolution in 1836 was basically these Texans that wanted independence from Mexico. And they won. All right. There was a big battle over it and they won. And that one, so they got the independence. And then for over a decade, Texas was an independent country. All right. Thank you very much. All the way up until the 1840s. Then the United States, one of the presidents, I think it was Polk. Yeah. He was running for office. And one of his things, one of his campaign slogan is, "I'll annex Texas. So Texas will become American land." And sure enough, he did that. In 1845, he moved to just take over Texas. Texas is now American land, kind of like what we did to Hawaii and everywhere else, right? Texas now belongs to the United States. Then there was a war, the Mexican-American War. And yes, all of this relates to how this is going to be decided. The Mexican-American War was fought for a couple years. America won. And then America, then the Treaty of Hidalgo, Guadalupe, there was an agreement that settled the war. American won. So Mexico agreed. Okay, Texas is now America. It belongs to America. And the Texan independent country lost. All right, so it became American soil owned by the United States. And part of that treaty, the United States gave Mexico $15 million for the whole state of Texas. And I know what everyone's thinking. We got screwed on that deal, right? Okay, so they gave Mexico $15 million for the whole state of Texas, and like a $3 million debt, they like waived it or something. But the important part of the treaty was where the boundary would be, and they agreed that the boundary would be the Rio Grande River. Mexico wanted that boundary to be this river called the Nucleus River, which is like way more north, so that it would have been more land in Mexico. But no, the United States treaty, they won the war, so they said the Rio Grande would be the border. Now, why this is important to this case is that there was also treaties that decided how they were going to treat the Rio Grande River in terms of who's going to get irrigation rights, to farm, how the water is split, how because theoretically somebody could take a pipe, right, and take all the water out, right? That would be a pretty big pipe. But you know what I'm saying? So there's all these treaties, and these were wars that were fought for these treaties. And all of these treaties are between the United States and Mexico over how that river is going to be treated, okay? Then there's another kind of issue, and that is, where the Rio Grande starts, where does the water come from? The Colorado Mountains, okay? So when the snow melts in the Colorado Mountains, all the water comes down, it goes through Colorado, New Mexico, into Texas. And it's crazy because New Mexico wasn't a state, so then there was all these, the federal government kind of like worked with those states to decide how they're going, kind of how they're going to resolve water rights between those states, okay? The reason why all of this is important, now we go to modern day, is that none of this had anything to do with the state of Texas, meaning the state of Texas didn't win the war, right? The state of Texas didn't have a treaty with the state of, or the country of Mexico. And all of this was regulated by the United States federal government. And so this is why now we have this dispute. So Governor Abbott, he basically said, I'm going to do this. And the federal government said you cannot do this. There was a federal law that was passed in the 1800s even that said in terms of any like rivers that if they run through different states or if they have a lot of water that runs even in one state, anything that's like they call like that was big enough that had to be navigated or the water would affect other states or the country environment. National environment, sorry, okay. Then it was something that would be within the jurisdiction of the United States federal government, not the state. And so, the federal government told Texas this, and you can't build those barriers. Even our own federal border patrol is having a problem now because they can't go through that river. And they can't, if there's somebody in danger, like a migrant that's drowning or something, they can't go save them because it's going to be harder to get around these freaking barriers. And we didn't approve it and we don't want it. Like we don't, it's not safe. It's not something President Biden wants to do. It's not something the federal Congress wanted to do. None of that. Just the state of Texas just went in there. And this is on property that the state of Texas does not own. And not even the United States own, not even Mexico owns. It's kind of like shared between those two countries. And now ordinarily, when the federal government tells the state government to stop doing something, they kind of stop doing it, okay? But not Texas. Now, let me explain then what happens. So the United States federal government 2 days ago, today is Wednesday, on Monday, July 24th, filed a federal action against Governor Abbott and the state of Texas. Now, in this lawsuit, the allegation is that the state of Texas is violating federal law and that they're asking the court to order Texas to take out these barriers and to pay money for all the legal case and everything. Okay, but the big one is to remove these barriers. And in the lawsuit, again, it was filed in the federal government. Now, the first order of business is the jurisdiction of the federal government. Okay. Now, by the way, this is a federal case, and it's in the federal court. It is not, the federal government does not need to sue the state of Texas in the state of Texas, meaning in the state court of the state of Texas. The federal law is that the federal government can sue the state of Texas in a federal court. The opposite does not hold true. Like the state of Texas cannot sue the federal government in the state of Texas. They would have to go to the federal court. And so it's like a big home field advantage, so to speak, right? that the federal government is going to the court of the federal government to sue the state of Texas. And there's even more. Okay. They could have, in the state of Texas, in the federal court system there, it is kind of, there's some advantage to the state of Texas, which physically there has to be the federal court in the state of Texas, okay? Because this is where this is happening. And the federal government could have sued them in that federal court that's physically located near Eagle Pass, all right? Or there's another federal district court in the city of Austin. They could have maybe sued in either of those. I've talked about this in other times, right? Forum shopping. The federal government decided to sue them in the federal court in Austin, not in the one by Eagle Pass. I don't know. Well, I do know why. They think that there'd be a better advantage. Like maybe people in Austin are more, liberal, so to speak, or more immigration friendly, or, they don't have to deal with the immigration problem day-to-day things, for example, that maybe the people in Eagle Pass do. So they thought they'd have a better shot in that court. Okay, so that's a forum shopping decision. But they could not sue. Even the federal court wouldn't have allowed the federal government to sue the Texas governor in the state of New York, for example, because that would have been the best place to sue him, because the New Yorkers hate this guy, right? Especially because he's sending migrants, busing them to New York. The federal government would have much preferred to file in the federal court that's physically located in New York, but that court would not have jurisdiction, okay? So it's not like, whatever. There's some fairness to the state of Texas, you could say, all right? And the argument by the federal government is going to go like this. The Congress enacted this law in the 1800s. And in that law that they enacted, the one I said about the Rivers and Harbors Act, it says in clear language, if it's something that affects this interstate commerce and it goes through different states and everything, and if the federal government declares a particular body of water to be, within that law and a navigatable river or lake or harbor or whatever, then anything that is done in those waters has to have a federal permit. And without a federal permit, then the federal government could order it to be taken off, right? And here, indeed, the Texas government enacted these barriers without a permit. And it wasn't like, oh man, we forgot to get a permit. No, they just, they obviously did it without that, okay? Governor Abbott's position, oh, by the way, he calls this, Governor Abbott has publicly stated that the floating barrier is part of the border effort called Operation Lone Star, right? That's a cool name. Okay, so Governor Abbott is saying in Operation Lone Star that the state of Texas has the authority to do this because the state of Texas is allowed to defend itself, and the state of Texas is allowed to make itself safer, like for its own residents. And the state of Texas is allowed to do all these things. And he's claiming that the federal government has not protected Texas, basically. Not basically, he hasn't. So the federal government has not protected Texas. So the federal government has, left Texas out to defend itself. And so therefore, Texas is going to defend itself. Now comes kind of the part in the podcast where I say what's going to happen. Okay, here's what's going to happen in the legal case. First of all, a lot of lawyers and judges are going to make a lot of money because it's going to first go to the federal district court. And sure enough, they're going to take like a year or two to decide this. And then ultimately it'll just be appealed to the circuit court. And then the circuit court will have several judges look at it. Tons of lawyers will debate it, all knowing that everything's going to be disregarded and decided by the Supreme Court. So for the life of me, I don't know why we can't just go to the Supreme Court and be like, hey, this is a pretty big deal. Do you want to just decide this, or do you want us to spend 5 or 6 years fighting in lower courts just to come back here? Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be efficient? Judges and haters, judges and lawyers hate efficiency. I never in law school heard the word efficiency. You know what I used to hear was the term judicial efficiency. And what I came to learn is that judicial efficiency is the exact opposite of efficiency, right? It should have just been called anti-efficiency. Judicial efficiency is send it to the lower courts, and only if an appellate court wants to hear it, they'll hear it. And then only if the Supreme Court wants to hear what the appellate court heard about the lower court, then the Supreme Court will hold it. It would be judicially inefficient to have the Supreme Court decide all these cases. Right? I think it's like, okay, why not just send it to the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court says, we would never take this case, or we don't want this case, or we're not sure yet. Okay, at least have that, so we save years of litigation, but whatever. Joe Samo, I apologize to my fellow lawyers for trying to do something that is judicially inefficient, right? Which is efficient, right? It's double negative. All right, so go back to the case. The federal government is going to win, all right? The federal court will rule in the federal government's favor. Now, why is the federal court going to rule in favor of the federal government? Because, like I said on previous episodes, the federal government won the motherfucking Civil War, okay? God damn it! How many times do I have to say this? The federal government beat the Confederacy in the... Can we do a newsflash?
Yeah.
Newsflash. The Union won the Civil War. Okay? Now, why do I say that? Because after the Civil War, the federal government won, and damn it, they made all these laws in place that says the federal government has the superior authority and power over the state government. Okay? There was a war that was fought over that the federal government won. I don't know why lawyers don't get this, okay? So that is why the federal government will win this. Now, there's only two ways that the state of Texas could have the authority to do something like this. There's only two ways. One is if the federal government just gives up power to the state of Texas, which I do not see it doing, or there's a revolution, which 50-50 chance at this point, okay? That's what I see. I mean, it's just the law, right? And any lawyer that knows what they're doing would agree with me in the sense of how this case will shake down. So hey, don't blame me, dude. Blame freaking Robert E. Lee, okay? I'm gonna beat those New Yorkers. And Ulysses Grant is a pussy. No, I don't know. Whatever he used to say to, get those through. We're going to go to Gettysburg and we're going to kick their ass. Okay, sorry. But the Confederacy lost. So the federal government has won the war. Can we do a news flash? No, just joking. Okay. So my feeling, okay, where do we go from here? Governor Abbott, I don't think he's an idiot. All right. He knows that he's going to lose in federal court. Like he absolutely knows that, unless he's an idiot, which I don't think he is. My gut feeling is that he's doing this because, and I don't know. What do you think? The immigration policy. I am not. Unlike me knowing who's going to win. I don't know. What do you think? If the border is so dangerous, would that save migrants' lives? Because they'd be like, we can't fucking cross. There's a fucking sniper that'll kill us, and there's barbed wire fence and blah blah blah. Or would it save more lives if the border is safe and people don't die crossing? What do you think?
Well, it seems like it's a slippery slope. Like, are they going to start digging moats next to?
Oh, yeah, or put mines in the, right? I don't know. I mean, yeah. So, exactly. So, there's all this policy debate and right? Like, and I don't know what's the safest thing. And there's definitely, something's not right when you have just hundreds of thousands of people like something, okay, something has to be done. Either be like, okay, let's just open everything up and everyone can come in, or let's close. I mean, I don't know. Those things those are policy disputes. Now, my expertise is this. The state of Texas doesn't have the authority to make those decisions, right? So the thing about should we make the border like stronger and a bigger wall and a fucking minefield everywhere and snipers, all of that, the jurisdiction of who could decide that is the federal government. So that would be up to the the federal Congress and the House of Representatives and the President of the United States who could veto it. And that's because of the Civil War, right? The federal government, the state of Texas does not have that authority. So I think Governor Abbott of Texas, I think he knows that. I think his lawyers told him that. But it's a good showing, right? It's a good political showing that he's pushing this envelope on behalf of the state of Texas, you could say. Because, it's not, I don't think it's looking good for President Biden that he's got this strife with the state of Texas. And I think that Governor Abbott, like sending the migrants all across the country, I think that has done it's done what he's wanted, which is a lot of publicity about the immigration issue. I think it's also gotten a lot of migrants out of Texas, which he clearly wants to do. I think this thing about the floating barriers, I think that the same thing. I think that he's doing it because it's pushing the envelope. It's getting the point across. It's getting less migrants potentially that are going to go there. And it's not, if the federal government wins in the court, okay, fine. They have to take down the barrier. But at least it was there for a few years because the judicial efficiency will take 7 years to decide what's freaking obvious that he doesn't have the authority to do it. But because the system is the way it is, maybe he could get away with doing it for several years and that could stop the immigration. So I think he knows the law. I think his lawyers know the law. And I think they're doing this kind of like for other reasons in terms of, like the reasons I just said, right? What did I promise in the beginning? Dad joke. Dad joke here. Daughter says to her dad, "Dad, make me a sandwich." And the dad says, "Abracadabra. You are now a sandwich." Love it. Hey, every week we're going to end with a dad joke. All right, guys. I would love to hear your opinion about this immigration issue and this fight between the state of Texas, this state power versus federal power deal. All right, see you guys next week.